Hi everyone, I'm Jess, I'm an animator at Ground Shatter, and today I'm going to show you how I animated the chef's 3/ combo. So here I've just started setting up the scene, and this means using a 1x1 meter box cube. That means that I don't have any clipping in the animation through walls if the chef is dotted around the map. Using a spy model as well so that I know where the impacts are and can animate according to the spacing and stuff. And also making sure that the idle position at the beginning of the animation is going to match the idle loop that you'll see the chef playing. This just means that the transition between the idle loop and the actual animation is going to be smooth and there's no jankiness everywhere. So next I'm blocking out the extreme poses in stepped mode, and stepped mode is essentially a pose-to-pose kind of robot mode where you don't see any of the frames in between, and all I see is the frames that I've actually put into the program. This way I have complete control over the frames that I'm working with, so that there's no gliding in between the frames, and that can be quite easy to distract, when really I should be focusing on making sure that I have strong silhouettes from all angles. I'm also blocking these out on frames of 5 at the moment in this stage of the animation, since all I want to be doing is focusing on creating really strong poses, when later I can just return to the timing. I'm sure most animators could probably go straight into it and have a sixth sense of timing and stuff, but at the moment I just prefer working this way. So while I'm working on these poses, I also have reference footage up that I had to record myself, which was so fun to explain to my housemates when they walked in on me, but that's the curse of the animator. Normally you can just find something online. I use a lot of martial arts websites and stuff when I'm animating the spy. But this time I couldn't actually find anything, so I just did a lot of research into how films portray chefs and stuff, and what video games do as well, animating him. Anybody really wielding a cleaver as well. But I mainly just used the reference footage for the extreme poses that the chef's in, just because using realistic timing for something that's so snappy and cartoony styled can be a bit of a hindrance sometimes. It's always good to have the reference footage up, so I always recommend it, but just take it into account that you're not copying a reference, you're just using it to have a basis of your animation. So this is where the animation really starts coming together. I start adding in between poses and adjusting the keyframes so that the animation plays as it should instead of just on blocks of 5. I'm still doing this all in stepped mode though, for the control over the timing and really emphasizing the really snappy motion, since I want the animation to go from pose to pose. I can also this way make the transitions a lot cleaner, since I'm not again being distracted by all the gliding motion, and I can just get the poses that I really want down. So you'll probably have noticed at this point that I'm watching it from multiple different angles as well, instead of just from one angle. And this is because the player can see the animation from as many different angles as they like. It's different from TV and film, where you can hide a lot of the animation if something doesn't work very well, or if a character turns around so they don't have to animate their face or anything. But for video games, you have to make sure everything looks good from every different angle. Doing it this way though still helps to spot anything weird like clipping or any jankiness, since it's like looking at it with a fresh pair of eyes, which is why I'm looking at it from lower angles as well, since fights in tight spaces is kind of almost isometric. So now that most of the animation is completed, it's time to go into smooth mode, which is the main point of CGI. This is the part where the computer starts actually generating the frames in between, and I don't have to animate every single frame like what we've been doing in stepped mode. So at the moment I'm just going back and fixing any weird rotations that kind of happens after moving into smooth mode. This isn't a normal thing, but it's a thing called gimbal locking. It's too much to explain at the moment and pretty boring, so instead I'm moving on to adjusting the frames, since when you move into smooth mode and all the frames are generated, you kind of lose the snappiness and it can feel a little bit slower. But all this takes is a little bit of tweaking. At this stage I also start adding the finer details like finger movements and hand movement as well. Also cloth simulation as well, but that normally happens after, once the animation is fully completed. But really the main focus at the moment is just to make sure the animation is snappy and clean. I'm also twisting some of the extreme poses a bit further than what they were previously, since even though this is a hold animation, we don't want it to look static, so there still needs to be some movement when he's pulling his cleaver back, and also when he's slashed through and holding that position. Because the follow through of the motion can really emphasize the impact on the slash. An animation like this will probably take me about 3 to 5 hours to do, especially if you're factoring in recording reference footage, any coffee breaks that I require, but it can really depend on what kind of animation you're doing. If you're doing a jumping one, it can take a bit longer, but likewise, something like this where his pelvis isn't really moving that much, it didn't take me too long. And that's how I animated the chef's 3/ combo. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something from this and enjoyed watching it. Make sure to follow Fights in Tight Spaces on Twitter for more updates.